Good evening, dear listeners. Welcome to this serene space where we invite you to unwind, let go of the day's worries, and drift gently into a world of calm and relaxation. This evening, we will be exploring a rather curious yet tranquil topic, the dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates. While the subject may seem mundane, we will take a soothing journey through the simplicity of medieval life, the intricacies of feudal obligations, and the gentle art of communication in an era long gone. As you settle in, allow the soothing cadence of my voice to wash over you. Picture yourself in a peaceful medieval village, where the air is filled with the scent of wildflowers and the soft sounds of nature cradle your ears. Imagine the warm glow of the setting sun over the thatched roofs, as the townsfolk go about their daily tasks, all bound by the rhythms of feudal duty. In this tranquil atmosphere, we will explore how these responsibilities were communicated through the humble notification letters that governed life on the manor. Tonight, we will gently stroll through the landscape of medieval life, exploring what feudal duty meant for both lords and vassals. We will take a closer look at the roles that these letters played in maintaining order and the sense of community within the manor. Though the topic may appear dry and unexciting at first glance, we will uncover the beauty in the simplicity of these communications and the lives they touched. Additionally, we will reflect on the structure and style of these notification letters, exploring how they were crafted with care, often filled with formalities and the weight of expectation. We will delve into the historical context surrounding the feudal system, learning how these letters served not only as reminders of duty but also as a means of fostering relationships and upholding social bonds. Throughout our journey, you are invited to close your eyes, take deep, calming breaths, and let the soft rhythm of my words guide you. Allow the gentle ebb and flow of history to soothe your mind, washing away any tension as you drift deeper into relaxation. In this peaceful exploration, we will also touch upon the significance of these letters in the grand tapestry of history. You may find yourself pleasantly surprised by the connections we draw between these seemingly mundane documents and the broader societal structures they supported. As we prepare to embark on this tranquil journey through time, I encourage you to find a cozy position, perhaps snuggling into your blankets or resting your head against a soft pillow. Let the cares of your day slip away, as we delve into the world of medieval manors, where the rhythm of life was dictated by duty, and the simplest of letters held great importance. Now, dear listeners, it is time to let go of the present and embrace the past. Allow the soothing waves of history to envelop you, as we transition into the heart of our exploration of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates. Relax, breathe, and let the calmness wash over you as we begin our journey. The historical evolution of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates can be traced back to the early medieval period, specifically around the 9th century. This period marked the consolidation of feudalism as a dominant societal structure in various regions of Europe, particularly in France and England. The genesis of such notification letters can be linked to the broader administrative practices emerging from the necessity of managing the complex relationships that characterized the manorial system. The earliest records of such notifications can be pinpointed to the year 850 AD, in the region of what is now known as Normandy, France. During this time, the Carolingian Empire was in decline, and local lords began to assert greater control over land and the peasantry residing upon it. Notably, Duke Richard I of Normandy, who ruled from 943 to 996 AD, is often credited with the formalization of administrative practices that included the use of written communications to inform vassals of their obligations. These notification letters served a crucial function within the manorial system, as they delineated the duties and responsibilities of serfs and vassals. The architectural context of this era, characterized by the evolution of manorial estates, played a significant role in the dissemination of such letters. Manors were typically comprised of a central hall, often constructed from timber, with thatched roofs and a courtyard surrounded by agricultural fields. The Great Hall was used for both administrative purposes and communal gatherings, where notifications could be verbally communicated before written records were distributed. By the 12th century, the practice of issuing feudal duty notifications had gained traction across England, particularly following the Norman conquest of 1066. William the Conqueror, having established his rule, initiated significant administrative reforms, including the implementation of the Domesday Book in 1086. This extensive survey provided a comprehensive record of landholdings and was instrumental in the administration of feudal duties. The necessity for clear communication regarding obligations owed by vassals to their lords became increasingly apparent, leading to the development of standardized notification templates. The architectural advancements of this period, particularly the construction of stone keeps and fortified manors, facilitated the administration of feudal obligations. The stone structures, which symbolized the power and permanence of the lord's authority, often contained scriptoriums where clerks would draft these notification letters. The clerks, usually educated monks or literate serfs, adhered to specific formulas and language conventions that would eventually evolve into templates used across various manors. By the late 13th century, it became common practice for lords to send out notification letters at the beginning of each agricultural season. These letters would outline the specific duties owed by the serfs, which included labor on the lord's domain, payment of rents, and various other obligations such as fealty and military service. The letters were often written in Latin, the lingua franca of the educated elite at the time, which would later transition to Middle English as literacy rates among the lower classes began to rise. One notable figure in the formalization of these notification practices was King Edward I of England, who ruled from 1272 to 1307. Edward I implemented a series of legal reforms that included the Statute of Winchester in 1285, which mandated that lords must inform their vassals of their duties in writing. This legal framework not only legitimized the use of notification letters but also standardized their content to some extent, ensuring that vassals were well aware of their obligations. Daily routines within the manor were heavily influenced by the issuing of these notification letters. Typically, at the beginning of spring, lords would convene with their stewards and clerks to draft the notification letters, which would then be distributed to the serfs. The serfs, upon receiving these letters, would often gather in the great hall or courtyard to discuss the implications of their duties. The community aspect of these gatherings fostered a sense of collective responsibility, albeit under the watchful eye of the lord or his steward. The structure of a typical notification letter included formal salutations, a clear enumeration of the duties owed, and a closing remark that often included a reminder of the consequences of failing to meet these obligations. For instance, a standard letter template from the late 14th century might read as follows. To our faithful vassal, name of vassal. We write to inform you of your duties for the upcoming agricultural season. It is your obligation to provide, number of days, of labor upon our domain and to deliver, specify quantities, of crops or goods, to our granary by the 1st of month. Failure to comply with these duties may result in specified consequences. We trust you shall fulfill your obligations with due diligence. Yours sincerely. Name of Lord. It is worth noting that the administrative procedures surrounding the issuance of these letters were rather mundane and highly structured. After the letters were drafted, they would be sealed with the Lord's signet ring, which served as a mark of authenticity. The letters would then be delivered by a messenger, often a trusted serf or steward, who was responsible for ensuring that the communication reached its intended recipient in a timely manner. As the 15th century approached, the nature of these notifications began to evolve further, reflecting changes in the socio-political landscape of Europe. The rise of towns and the development of a merchant class began to influence the feudal system, leading to a gradual decline in the absolute authority of lords over their vassals. Despite this, notification letters continued to serve a vital function in maintaining the remnants of feudal obligations, albeit with modifications that reflected the changing context. The architectural developments of this period, including the rise of the manor house as a more comfortable and less fortified residence, also influenced the manner in which these letters were produced and distributed. The introduction of the printing press in the mid-15th century, while not immediately applicable to the rural contexts of manorial governance, eventually led to greater accessibility of written materials and templates, allowing for a more standardized approach to notification letters. By the late medieval period, the practice of issuing feudal duty notification letters was firmly entrenched in the administrative practices of manors across Europe. Although the content and style of these letters could vary significantly depending on the region and the specific lord's preferences, the fundamental purpose remained unchanged: to inform serfs and vassals of their obligations and to maintain the hierarchical structure that characterized feudal society. In conclusion, the dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates reveals a systematic approach to governance that was deeply intertwined with the socio-political and architectural developments of the period. From the early origins in 9th century Normandy through the legal reforms of Edward I and the eventual influences of the printing press, the evolution of these notification letters reflects a broader narrative of feudalism's complexities and the mundane, yet critical, administrative practices that sustained it. The construction methods employed in the Middle Ages for the establishment of manorial structures were typified by a utilitarian approach, emphasizing practicality over aesthetic considerations. The primary materials utilized during this period were timber, wattle and daub, stone, and thatch. Timber, particularly oak, was preferred for its durability and availability. The oak trees, typically harvested from local forests, were cut down using axes, and their logs were then fashioned into frames for various buildings, including the manor house, barns, and stables. The wattle and daub technique, combining interwoven wooden strips, wattle, with a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung, daub, was widely employed for constructing walls. This method was favored for its cost-effectiveness and insulating properties, allowing for a certain degree of thermal efficiency in the often chilly medieval climate. The use of stone became more prevalent in the later medieval period, particularly in regions where granite or limestone was readily accessible. The construction of stone structures involved quarrying blocks, which were then meticulously shaped and laid in mortar to create robust edifices. The earliest known stone manor, constructed in 1066, was the fortified manor of Chepstow, notable for its thick walls and defensive features, including a drawbridge and moat. Maintenance procedures for these manorial structures were typically regimented and dictated by seasonal changes. Regular inspections were conducted to assess the state of the roofs, walls, and foundations. Thatched roofs, while economical, required frequent repair. Thatching was typically done during late spring or early summer, with local laborers using bundles of reeds or straw, measuring approximately 3 feet in length and 2 feet in diameter. The upkeep of wooden elements, such as doors and window frames, necessitated periodic treatments with linseed oil or animal fat to prevent rot and insect infestation. The records indicate that in 1293, an estate in Yorkshire allocated 2 pence per week for the maintenance of its wooden structures, a figure that remained consistent through the 14th century. Financial records pertaining to manorial obligations and maintenance were meticulously kept, often in the form of account rolls or ledgers. These records documented expenditures related to labor, materials, and tools required for repairs and upkeep. For instance, in 1350, the Manor of Waltham recorded a total expenditure of 10 shillings for the purchase of iron nails and additional timber for the repair of the stable and granary roofs. The meticulous nature of these financial documents reflects the importance of accurate record-keeping in the feudal system, where the viability of the manor depended on the effective allocation of resources. Personnel involved in the maintenance of these manors were categorized based on their roles and responsibilities. The position of the steward was crucial. This individual acted as the manor's chief administrator, overseeing the financial transactions and maintenance schedules. Below the steward was the bailiff, responsible for the day-to-day operations, including the supervision of laborers engaged in maintenance work. Records from 1385 show that the bailiff of the Manor of Elham was responsible for managing a workforce of 10 laborers, tasked with maintaining the estate's buildings and grounds. Laborers often included skilled craftsmen such as carpenters and masons, as well as unskilled laborers who were typically employed on a seasonal basis. Carpenters, for instance, specialized in timber framing and repairs, while masons focused on stonework. A carpenter's wage in 1420 was approximately 4 pence per day, whereas a mason could command up to 6 pence, reflecting the specialized skills required for the latter's trade. In terms of job descriptions, the steward was tasked with ensuring that all manor operations ran smoothly, managing accounts and overseeing the bailiff's activities. The bailiff's job included organizing work schedules for laborers, maintaining relationships with local tradespeople, and reporting to the steward on the state of the manor's infrastructure. A notable entry from 1478 details the bailiff's duties in the manor of Kenilworth, emphasizing his responsibility for the timely repair of the mill, which was critical for the manor's grain processing. Technical specifications of the buildings on a medieval manor varied widely based on local resources and the specific needs of the community. The manor house, serving as the residence of the lord, often featured a great hall, which measured approximately 30 feet by 15 feet, adorned with a large hearth for cooking and heating. The hall was typically flanked by smaller chambers, which served as living quarters for the lord and his family. In contrast, agricultural buildings such as barns and stables were constructed in accordance with functional requirements. A typical barn might measure 60 feet in length and 30 feet in width, with a thatched roof to facilitate water runoff. The layout often incorporated designated areas for livestock and storage of harvested crops, with the interior divided by wooden partitions. The granary, an essential structure on the manor, required careful planning to ensure proper ventilation and protection from pests. Granaries were often elevated off the ground, supported by wooden stilts, to prevent dampness and rodents from compromising the stored grain. The specifications for a standard granary often included walls at least 3 feet thick, constructed from locally sourced stone or timber, with a floor space of approximately 20 feet by 10 feet. In summary, the dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates not only serves as an account of written communication but also reflects the underlying complexities of life on a manor. The construction methods and materials, maintenance procedures, financial records, personnel roles, and technical specifications all paint a picture of a society deeply entrenched in the feudal system. Each aspect contributed to the overarching narrative of stability and sustainability, albeit within the confines of a monotonous and highly regulated existence. Ultimately, the administrative practices surrounding feudal duties were crucial for the maintenance of order and productivity within the manorial system, illustrating the importance of meticulous record-keeping and careful resource management in the perpetuation of medieval life. The construction methods employed in the Middle Ages for the establishment of manorial structures were typified by a utilitarian approach, emphasizing practicality over aesthetic considerations. This period, which spanned roughly from the 5th to the late 15th centuries, saw a significant evolution in building techniques influenced by local resources, climate, and social needs. The primary materials utilized during this time were timber, wattle and daub, stone, and thatch. Timber, particularly oak, was preferred for its durability and availability. Oak trees, typically harvested from local forests, were cut down using axes crafted from iron or steel, which were becoming more widely available by the 12th century. The logs were then fashioned into frames for the buildings, often using a technique known as timber framing. This method involved creating a skeleton structure of vertical posts and horizontal beams, which provided a sturdy framework on which to build the walls and roofs. Wattle and daub, another common construction material, consisted of woven branches, wattle, daubed with a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung, daub. This method was particularly advantageous for its insulation properties, making it suitable for the often chilly climates of northern Europe. The use of wattle and daub can be traced back to prehistoric times, but it remained a prevalent technique throughout the Middle Ages. In fact, some of the earliest examples of this method can be found in the Anglo-Saxon houses of the 9th century, where wattle and daub was used to create sturdy yet lightweight walls. The transition to more permanent structures began around the 12th century, when manorial houses began to be built from stone. This shift was partly a response to the increasing need for defensible structures during a period marked by feudal conflicts and invasions. Stone buildings, often constructed from local limestone or granite, provided greater security and longevity than their timber counterparts. A prime example of this is the construction of the Great Stone Keep at the Tower of London, which began in 1066 under the orders of William the Conqueror. This massive structure not only served as a royal residence but also as a fortress, illustrating the dual purpose of medieval architecture. By the 13th century, the introduction of the Gothic style began to influence manorial architecture, particularly in the design of churches and larger noble houses. This style emphasized verticality and light, featuring pointed arches and large stained glass windows. Notable examples include the construction of Chartres Cathedral in France, which began in 1194 and was completed by 1220, showcasing the evolving architectural techniques of the time. The roofing materials used during the Middle Ages also evolved significantly. Thatched roofs, made from reeds or straw, were common in rural structures due to their abundance and insulating properties. However, thatch was highly flammable, leading to the introduction of tiles and slates in more urban areas and wealthier estates. The transition to tile roofs began in the late 12th century, with clay tiles becoming more popular in regions such as Italy and France. The use of these materials was often dictated by local availability and the socio-economic status of the manor. In terms of measurements, the average size of a manorial hall during the Middle Ages ranged from 30 to 50 feet in length, with a width of about 20 to 30 feet. The height of these structures often exceeded 20 feet to accommodate the high ceilings typical of the period, which were designed to allow smoke from the hearth to escape. The layout of manorial structures typically included a great hall, which served as the central living space, bedrooms for the lord and lady, and storage rooms for food and supplies. The historical context of these building practices cannot be overlooked. The feudal system that dominated medieval society necessitated a stronghold for the lord, which in turn influenced the design and construction of manorial structures. These buildings were not merely homes, they were symbols of power and authority. The location of a manor was often strategically chosen for its defensibility, proximity to arable land, and resources. For instance, the Manor of Domesday Book fame, recorded in 1086, provides a snapshot of the architectural landscape of the time. It illustrates how manors varied in complexity and size, from simple wooden houses to elaborate stone structures, depending on the wealth of the lord and the region's resources. In conclusion, the construction methods of the Middle Ages were greatly influenced by the materials available and the social structures of the time. From timber frames to stone keeps, the evolution of manorial architecture reflects a blend of practicality, regional resources, and the socio-political context of medieval life. As the centuries progressed, These buildings not only served functional purposes but also evolved into enduring symbols of feudal power and societal organization. The construction of medieval manor houses was a process marked by a variety of methods and materials, reflective of the prevailing architectural trends and local resources available during the period. The timeline of these constructions can be traced back to the early 11th century, a time when the Norman influence began to shape the English landscape. Typically, the construction of a manor house commenced with the selection of a suitable site, often elevated, to provide defense against potential threats. The foundations were generally made from stone, with dimensions varying from 1 to 2 meters in depth, and were often laid upon a bed of gravel to ensure proper drainage. The walls of the manor were commonly constructed using timber framing techniques, especially in the late 12th century, where wattle and daub or plaster was used to fill the gaps, creating a sturdy yet lightweight structure. The timber used for these constructions was often oak, which was readily available and known for its durability. Around the late 13th century, the use of stone became more prevalent, particularly in regions such as Yorkshire and Lancashire, where limestone was abundant. For instance, the manor house at Haddon Hall, constructed in the late 12th century, showcases the transition from timber to stone, with its great hall featuring walls constructed from locally sourced limestone and sandstone. The dimensions of the Great Hall typically ranged from 10 to 15 meters in width and could extend up to 30 meters in length, accommodating the lord and his retinue. Maintenance procedures for these manorial structures were essential to ensure longevity and functionality. Regular inspections were mandated, often conducted biannually, focusing on the integrity of the roof, walls, and foundational elements. Roofs were predominantly covered with thatch until the 14th century when tiles began to gain popularity. Maintenance of thatch required periodic replacement every 10 to 15 years, whereas tiled roofs, although more expensive, offered durability lasting upwards of 50 years with proper care. The financial records associated with the upkeep of these manors were meticulously maintained, as they were critical for the lord's estate management. A typical manor's financial ledger recorded expenses, labor costs, and material purchases. For example, in 1302, the manor of Waltham recorded expenditures totaling 15 shillings on timber, 8 shillings for labor, and 3 shillings for thatching materials. These records were often inscribed in parchment using quills, with entries denoting specific activities, such as, paid for the repair of the east wing roof or, cost of new iron nails for the timber framework. Personnel involved in the maintenance and operation of the manor house were diverse, ranging from skilled craftsmen to unskilled laborers. The roles included the steward, responsible for overseeing the estate's financial and administrative duties, the bailiff, who managed the day-to-day operations, and various artisans such as carpenters, masons, and thatchers. For instance, a carpenter would typically be tasked with constructing furniture, repairing timber structures, and maintaining roofing systems, while a mason focused on stonework, including the construction of walls and chimneys. Job descriptions were often documented within the manor's records, detailing the expectations and responsibilities assigned to each role. A steward, for example, was expected to report directly to the lord, manage accounts, and supervise the estate's workforce. This position often required literacy, which was a rarity during the medieval period, thus making the steward one of the more prestigious roles within the manor. Technical specifications of the buildings were dictated by both function and status. For example, the Great Hall, a focal point of social and administrative activities, often featured a high ceiling, sometimes reaching heights of 6 to 8 meters, with an open hearth in the center, utilized for heating and cooking. The dimensions of windows were usually small, measuring approximately 60 centimeters in width and 90 centimeters in height, to reduce heat loss and protect against intruders. Glass windows became more common in the late 13th century, although they were a luxury reserved for higher status manors. The layout of the manor was also a reflection of its purpose. The typical design included a central courtyard surrounded by the Great Hall, residential quarters for the lord and his family, and service areas such as kitchens and storerooms. The physical arrangement was not merely functional but also emblematic of the social hierarchy, with the lord's chambers located in a more elevated position, often on the upper floor of the structure. As the 14th century progressed, the architectural style of manor houses began to reflect the Gothic influences of the period, with features including pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and intricate stonework. The manor of Bolsover Castle, constructed in the mid-16th century but reflecting earlier styles, illustrates the incorporation of these elements, with towering parapets and ornate windows. These stylistic shifts would eventually culminate in the more elaborate designs of the Tudor period. Financial documentation continued to evolve alongside architectural practices. By the 15th century, manorial accounts had become more sophisticated, with detailed records of landholdings, crop yields, and labor obligations. An example from the manor of Wresel in 1450 indicates that income from agricultural produce amounted to £25, while expenses for labor and materials accounted for nearly £18, demonstrating the delicate balance of income and expenditure necessary for maintaining the estate. In terms of personnel, the number of workers on a manor could vary widely depending on its size and wealth. A smaller manor might operate with a staff of 5 to 10 individuals, while larger estates could employ upwards of 50. Each member played a crucial role in the overall functioning of the manor. The cook, for instance, was responsible for preparing meals for both the lord's family and the numerous guests often entertained in the Great Hall, while the gardener tended to the herb and vegetable plots that provided sustenance. In summary, the history of medieval manor houses is a tapestry of construction techniques, maintenance practices, financial management, and personnel organization. From the first timber-framed structures of the 11th century to the sophisticated stone manors of the late medieval period, each development reflected the broader socio-economic dynamics of the time. The tedious documentation of financial records, job descriptions, and technical specifications serves as a testament to the complex administration required to sustain these feudal bastions. The evolution of the manor house not only marked advancements in architectural design but also mirrored the shifting power dynamics of medieval society, encapsulating the very essence of feudal duty and obligation that defined the era. The construction methods employed in the construction of medieval manors were predominantly dictated by local geography and the availability of materials. Most manorial structures were built from timber, a readily available resource in the rural landscapes of England and other parts of Europe. Timber-framed construction, which became widespread by the late 12th century, involved the use of wooden beams and posts to create a skeletal structure, filled in with wattle and daub or, in some cases, infilled with brick or stone. This method allowed for flexibility in design and was well suited to the regional climates. By the 13th century, the use of stone began to gain popularity, particularly in areas where the local geology provided access to limestone and granite. The construction of stone manors required considerable labor and resources, as stones had to be quarried, transported, and shaped. The average size of the stones used ranged from 30 centimeters to 50 centimeters in length, and walls were often constructed to a thickness of about 1 meter to provide the necessary support and insulation. Mortar, typically made from a mixture of lime, sand, and water, was employed to bind the stones together, which further improved the durability of these structures. Maintenance procedures for these manorial buildings were critical to ensure their longevity and functionality. The upkeep of a manor involved regular inspections and repairs, which were often documented in the manor's financial records. Responsibilities for maintenance typically fell to the lord of the manor, who would appoint a steward to oversee these tasks. According to records from the 14th century, it was common for stewards to maintain a detailed log of repairs, listing the type of work done, the materials used, and the labor costs incurred. For example, in 1345, a steward's report from a manor in Kent detailed the repair of a thatched roof, which included the replacement of 200 bundles of reeds at a cost of 4 pence per bundle. This effort was necessary to prevent water damage and structural decay, as roofs were particularly susceptible to the elements. Additionally, the upkeep of the manor's surrounding grounds, including gardens and orchards, was essential for both aesthetic and practical purposes, often requiring the attention of multiple laborers. Financial records and costs associated with the construction and maintenance of manors provide a sobering view of the economic landscape of the medieval period. The average cost of constructing a timber-framed manor in the late 12th century was approximately £20, which, when adjusted for inflation, would represent a significant investment in contemporary terms. In contrast, stone manors could cost upwards of £100, depending on the complexity of the design and the quality of the materials used. The documentation of these costs was often meticulous. For instance, a ledger from a manor in Yorkshire dated 1382 lists expenditures for various building materials, including 1,500 bricks at 2 pence per hundred and 300 tiles at 3 pence per hundred. Labor costs were typically recorded separately. A skilled mason might command a wage of 6 pence per day, while unskilled laborers might earn only 3 pence. Such records were vital for the lords of the manor to track their finances and ensure the sustainability of their estates. Personnel involved in the construction and maintenance of these manors were diverse and often specialized. A manor would typically employ a variety of tradesmen, including carpenters, masons, thatchers, and smiths. The job descriptions for these roles were often standardized. A carpenter, for instance, would be responsible for the framing of the structure, the installation of windows and doors, and the construction of furniture within the manor. Masons, on the other hand, would focus on the stonework, ensuring that load-bearing walls were properly constructed and that decorative elements were executed with precision. By the late 14th century, the growth of urban centers began to influence the labor market, resulting in a shortage of skilled tradesmen in rural areas. This shift forced many manors to rely on itinerant workers, who traveled from site to site, offering their services as needed. Records indicate that manorial lords often had to negotiate wages and terms of service with these workers, occasionally leading to disputes that required mediation. Technical specifications for the construction of a medieval manor were dictated by both functional and aesthetic considerations. The average dimensions of a manor house were approximately 30 meters in length and 10 meters in width, with the central hall often serving as the focal point of the structure. The height of these buildings varied, with 2 to 3 stories being common, although some more elaborate manors could reach heights of up to 12 meters. The layout of the manor was typically designed around a central hall, which served as the main living and gathering space for the family and guests. Adjacent rooms would often include the solar, where the lord and lady of the manor would retire, and the service rooms that housed the kitchen and storage areas. Windows, initially small and few in number, became larger and more numerous as glass production improved by the 15th century, allowing for better illumination and ventilation. Heating was primarily provided by an open hearth in the center of the hall, and as such, smoke often filled the space. The design of chimneys became more sophisticated over time, transitioning from simple flues to more elaborate structures that extended above the roofline, improving air quality within the living spaces. In conclusion, the construction, maintenance, and operational aspects of medieval manors reflect the complexities of feudal duty and obligation. From the selection of materials and labor to the financial implications and technical specifications, each element played a vital role in the establishment and sustainability of these pivotal structures in medieval society. The documents and records that have survived provide an invaluable window into the lives of those who inhabited these manors and the intricate systems that supported them, forming an essential part of the broader historical narrative of the medieval period. The construction methods employed in the construction of medieval manors were predominantly dictated by local geography and the availability of materials. Most manorial structures were built from timber, a readily available resource in the rural landscapes of England and other parts of Europe. Timber-framed construction, which became widespread by the late 12th century, involved the use of wooden beams and posts to create a skeletal structure, filled in with wattle and daub or, in some cases, infilled with brick or stone. The typical manor house was often constructed in a rectangular shape, with a hall at the center, flanked by service rooms and private chambers. This layout was not just practical, it also reflected the hierarchical nature of medieval society. For instance, the halls served as the primary gathering space for both the lord and his household, and it was often adorned with tapestries and other decorative elements to signify the status of the owner. The first recorded construction of a timber-framed manor is believed to have occurred around 1150 AD, marking a significant evolution from earlier, more rudimentary structures. As we look more closely at the construction methods, we find that the use of timber was not universal across all regions. In areas where stone was more readily available, such as the Cotswolds or the Pennines, many manors were built using local limestone. The construction of these stone manors often began in the late 13th century and continued into the 14th century, reflecting the growing importance of durability and status in manorial architecture. An excellent case study is the manor house at Hylles, built around 1300, which showcases the transition from timber to stone, with its robust walls and intricate masonry. The construction process itself was labor-intensive and relied heavily on local craftsmanship. For timber-framed houses, the first step involved selecting appropriate trees, typically oaks, which were felled during the winter months when the sap was down. The logs were then seasoned and cut into beams and posts. This process often took place in the spring, with construction ideally starting in the summer months when the weather was favorable. The frame was assembled using a technique known as mortise and tenon, which allowed for strong joints without the need for nails, a scarce commodity at the time. Once the frame was in place, builders would fill the spaces between the timbers with wattle and daub, a mixture of woven branches, wattle, covered with a clay-based plaster, daub. This not only provided insulation but also added a degree of fire resistance, which was crucial given the open hearths used for cooking and heating. The daub would typically be applied in several layers, allowing for adequate drying time between applications. The final surface could then be whitewashed or painted, adding both aesthetic value and protection against the elements. The late medieval period, particularly from 1350 to 1500, saw further advancements in construction methods, driven by a burgeoning economy and increased trade. By this time, manorial architecture began to reflect the wealth of the landowner more distinctly. For example, the Manor of Stokesay, built in the late 13th century, features a combination of local stone and intricate carvings, showcasing the owner's affluence and the skilled craftsmanship of the period. Additionally, the introduction of the Great Hall concept during the 14th century marked a significant shift in the design of manor houses. The Great Hall was a large, central room used for feasting and gatherings, often featuring a high, timbered ceiling supported by massive beams. This architectural style spoke to the social customs of the time, where communal dining was central to the feudal system. The use of large windows, often with stained glass, became more common during this period, allowing natural light to flood the space and emphasizing the grandeur of the hall. Furthermore, the transition from timber to stone construction was not only a matter of durability but also a reflection of changing societal values. As the medieval period progressed, the importance of displaying wealth and power became increasingly significant. The construction of manors began to incorporate defensive features, such as crenellated parapets and moats, especially in regions prone to conflict. The Manor of Bodiam Castle, built in 1385, exemplifies this trend, combining residential comforts with military fortifications. In summary, the construction of medieval manors reflects a complex interplay of local resources, technological advances, and societal norms. From the early timber-framed houses of the 12th century to the grand stone structures of the late medieval period, the evolution of these buildings offers a window into the past, illustrating how architecture can embody the values, aspirations, and realities of its time. As we continue to study these manorial structures, we gain invaluable insights into the lives of those who inhabited them, the communities they fostered, and the enduring legacy of medieval architecture. The construction methods employed in the erection of medieval manors were characterized by regional variations, yet several common techniques and materials can be catalogued. The primary structural elements included timber, stone, and wattle and daub, depending on the geographic location and available resources. In areas with abundant forests, timber-framed constructions were prevalent. The technique of timber framing involved erecting a framework of wooden beams and posts, which were then filled with wattle, woven branches, and daub, a mixture of mud, clay, and straw. This method was notably employed in the construction of manors in the English Midlands, where the abundance of timber allowed for efficient building processes. In contrast, stone was favored in regions where it was plentiful, such as the northern parts of England and Scotland. The use of local stone, such as granite or limestone, necessitated quarrying, which often required considerable labor and organization. To construct the walls, stones were typically cut into blocks measuring approximately 30 to 40 centimeters in length and 15 to 20 centimeters in height. The blocks were then arranged in a manner that ensured stability, often using lime mortar, a mixture of lime, sand, and water, to bind the stones together. Such construction could take several years. For example, the Manor of Hedingham Castle, built between 1140 and 1150, exemplifies this method, with its walls standing over 3 meters thick at the base. Maintenance procedures for these manorial structures were as crucial as their initial construction. Regular inspections were conducted, often by the steward of the manor, to assess the integrity of the buildings. Maintenance tasks included the repair of roofs, which were typically thatched with straw or reeds, or tiled with clay tiles, particularly in more affluent areas. The average lifespan of a thatched roof was approximately 15 to 20 years, necessitating periodic replacement and repairs. In 1327, a record from the Manor of Halesowen indicates that 40 shillings were allocated for the replacement of thatch on various buildings within the estate. Financial records concerning the costs of maintaining and constructing manorial buildings reveal much about the economic status of the manor. The records often included detailed accounts of expenditures for materials and labor. For instance, in 1341, the Manor of Whitley recorded a total expenditure of £13 6s. for the repair of the Great Hall, which included £6 for timber, £4 for labor, and £3 6s. for other materials. The meticulous documentation of these costs illustrates the importance of financial management in the feudal system. Furthermore, manorial accounts provided insights into the economic relationships between lords and vassals, as the latter were often obliged to contribute labor or materials as part of their feudal duties. Personnel involved in the maintenance and construction of manorial buildings included a variety of roles, each with specific job descriptions. The steward served as the overseer of the manor, responsible for the overall management and maintenance of the estate. The bailiff, a subordinate of the steward, handled day-to-day operations, including the supervision of laborers. Laborers themselves were often serfs bound to the land, who performed manual work such as repairing roofs, tending to the gardens, or constructing new structures. Skilled craftsmen, such as carpenters and masons, were also essential to the construction process. A carpenter, for instance, would typically be expected to create wooden beams, doors, and windows, while a mason would focus on stone walls and foundations. In 1250, a record from the Manor of Alnwick specifies the wages for a master mason as 12 pence a day, while a skilled carpenter earned 8 pence. Technical specifications of manorial buildings reflected both practical needs and the social status of the occupants. The dimensions of these structures varied widely, however. Many manorial great halls measured approximately 10 meters in width and 20 meters in length. The height of these halls often exceeded 6 meters, with vaulted ceilings supported by wooden trusses or stone arches, depending on the construction material. Windows were typically small, measuring around 50 centimeters by 100 centimeters, and were often covered with oiled cloth or thin sheets of horn to admit light while providing some degree of insulation. Fireplaces, central to the hall's design, were often constructed of stone and could measure up to 2 meters wide, equipped with a chimney to vent smoke outside. The importance of these structures extended beyond mere shelter. They served as centers for social and economic activity. The Great Hall was often the focal point for gatherings, feasts, and the administration of justice. The arrangement of furniture in the hall was highly significant, dictated by the social hierarchy. The lord and his family would occupy the high table, positioned at the end of the hall, while lesser guests were seated further away. The layout of these spaces was not only functional but also a reflection of the feudal order. Furthermore, the layout of the manor itself was designed to facilitate the efficient operation of agricultural and domestic activities. The manor typically included several key components: the main house, the manor house, ancillary buildings such as stables and granaries, and arable land. The average manor would encompass around 100 acres of land, divided between arable, pasture, and woodland. A detailed examination of the land use records from the Manor of Croyland in 1290 reveals that approximately 40 acres were dedicated to arable crops, while 30 acres were reserved for pasture, with the remaining 30 acres classified as woodland or fallow. The cultivation of crops was essential for the sustenance of the manor's inhabitants. Common crops included wheat, barley, and rye, often sown in a 3-field system, allowing for rotation and optimal soil preservation. The records specify that each field typically measured about 20 acres, with sowing occurring in March and April, followed by harvesting in late summer, around August. The efficient organization of labor was crucial during the harvest season, with all available hands, including serfs and freeholders, mobilized to gather the crops promptly. In conclusion, the construction methods, maintenance procedures, financial records, personnel roles, and technical specifications of medieval manors provide a detailed understanding of the feudal system and the communities that thrived within it. Through meticulous record-keeping and careful management of resources, lords were able to maintain their estates, ensuring the longevity of these structures and their continued significance in the fabric of medieval society. The legacy of these manorial systems continues to inform our understanding of historical social structures and architectural practices, underscoring the importance of these seemingly mundane details in the broader narrative of history. The dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates has, until this point, meticulously traversed the unexciting yet profoundly intricate landscape of feudal obligations. As we delve deeper into this exhaustive exploration, we shall now focus on regional variations and comparisons, the evolution of feudal duty notification letters over different time periods, the myriad bureaucratic regulations and laws that govern them, the logistics and supply chain issues inherent in their execution, and the various methods of record-keeping that have contributed to their historical significance. Regional variations and comparisons. Within the vast tapestry of medieval Europe, the structure of feudalism and the corresponding notification letter templates exhibited notable regional variations. For instance, in the northern regions of England, such as Yorkshire and Northumberland, the feudal system was heavily influenced by the Viking settlements, leading to a unique blend of Anglo-Saxon and Norse traditions. As a result, the language and formality employed in duty notification letters in these areas often incorporated Old Norse lexicon and syntax, which can be observed in the local dialects of the time. Conversely, in the southern counties, such as Kent and Sussex, where the influence of the Normans was more pronounced following the 1066 conquest, the templates reflected a more standardized Latin structure. The use of the Latin language not only lent an air of gravitas to the documents but also provided a common linguistic framework that could be understood across the diverse array of manor lords and their vassals. The regional variations extended beyond mere language, they also encompassed the specific obligations and duties outlined in the letters. In the fertile lands of the fens, for example, the notification letters frequently included directives regarding the maintenance of dikes and watercourses, reflecting the paramount importance of effective water management in agricultural productivity. In contrast, on the rugged hills of Wales, the letters often mandated duties related to the defence of local strongholds, reflecting the ongoing tensions between Welsh principalities and English encroachment. Comparative studies reveal that the style and content of these letters were also influenced by the socio-economic conditions of each region. In areas experiencing economic prosperity, such as the cloth-producing regions of Flanders, the templates often included detailed accounts of expected contributions to the manor's economic activities, including the production of textiles. These letters demanded not only physical labor but also adherence to specific quality standards, thereby establishing a clear link between the vassal's obligations and the economic output of the manor. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of feudal duty notification letters is not merely a tale of linguistic change but is also a reflection of the shifting socio-political landscape of medieval Europe. The initial templates, emerging in the early Middle Ages, were often rudimentary, consisting of simple proclamations of duty with minimal elaboration. These early documents were typically handwritten on parchment and lacked the formalities that would come to characterize later iterations. As we progress into the High Middle Ages, the demand for more elaborate and formalized documentation grew. The rise of centralized monarchies and the burgeoning bureaucratic apparatus necessitated a corresponding sophistication in legal documents. By the 12th century, duty notification letters began to adopt a more standardized format, often beginning with a formal salutation that addressed both the lord and the vassal, followed by a clear enumeration of obligations. The introduction of the printing press in the late 15th century marked a significant turning point in the evolution of these documents. The ability to mass-produce templates allowed for greater uniformity in the language and structure of notification letters, as well as the introduction of standardized legal terminology. This development not only streamlined communication but also facilitated the dissemination of legal knowledge among the lower classes, who could now access printed materials that elucidated their duties more clearly. However, despite these advancements, the essential nature of the feudal duty notification letter remained unchanged. It continued to serve as a formal notice of obligations, requiring vassals to fulfill their duties, be they military service, agricultural labor, or monetary payments, under threat of forfeiture of their lands or other penalties. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic regulations and laws governing feudal duty notification letters were both extensive and complex. The Magna Carta of 1215, often heralded as a foundational document of English law, included provisions that directly impacted the issuance of these letters. The Charter established principles that curbed the arbitrary exercise of power by lords, thereby necessitating a more formalized process for documenting and communicating feudal obligations. Within the framework of this legal evolution, a number of specific regulations came into play. For instance, the Statute of Winchester in 1285 mandated that lords maintain accurate records of their vassals and their respective duties. This law required that every lord keep a book of fees, a ledger that meticulously documented the relationships between lords and vassals, including the nature and extent of obligations owed. Furthermore, the requirement for vassals to be notified of their duties in writing was formalized, which led to the establishment of specific protocols for the issuance of notification letters. Lords were expected to deliver these letters personally or through an appointed messenger, thereby ensuring that vassals were fully aware of their obligations. This personal delivery method was not merely a formality, it served as a means of reinforcing the bond between lord and vassal, reminding the latter of their social and legal responsibilities. Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of fulfilling feudal duties, as communicated through the notification letters, were often fraught with complications. The supply chain involved in ensuring that vassals could meet their obligations was intricate and varied significantly based on regional geography and the nature of the duties assigned. In agricultural regions, for instance, the supply chain for fulfilling labor obligations often hinged on the timely availability of tools, seeds, and livestock. Lords were responsible for providing the necessary equipment for tasks such as plowing, sowing, and harvesting. As a result, notification letters commonly included directives about the provision of these resources, with meticulous details about the quantity and quality expected. In contrast, military obligations required a different set of logistical considerations. Vassals were often required to provide their own arms and armor for service in the lord's retinue. Consequently, notification letters pertaining to military duties often included clauses that specified the type of equipment that was deemed acceptable, the time frame for its readiness, and the consequences of failing to comply. The role of local markets in this supply chain cannot be overstated. Vassals were frequently required to procure provisions from local markets to meet their obligations. This requirement led to the establishment of a network of trade routes and local suppliers, which facilitated the movement of goods necessary for both agricultural and military duties. Documentation of these transactions often found its way into the records of the manorial court, further intertwining the logistics of feudal duties with the broader economic landscape of medieval society. Record-keeping methods. The methods of record-keeping that accompanied the issuance of feudal duty notification letters were varied and evolved over time, reflecting the increasing complexity of feudal obligations. In the early medieval period, records were often kept in a rudimentary fashion, typically inscribed on wax tablets or parchment scrolls. The lack of standardized forms led to considerable variability in how information was documented, which could result in confusion regarding obligations. As the feudal system matured, so too did the systems of record-keeping. The establishment of manorial courts necessitated the creation of more formalized records. Clerks, often monks or literate serfs, were employed to maintain meticulous records of all transactions, duties, and obligations. These records were often organized in large tomes known as court rolls, which provided detailed accounts of the activities of the manor, including the issuance of duty notification letters. The introduction of the quill pen and ink further enhanced the clarity and durability of these records. The meticulousness of clerical work became paramount, as errors in documentation could lead to disputes and grievances among vassals. Consequently, clerks were trained in the art of calligraphy and record-keeping, ensuring that the letters were not only legible but also aesthetically pleasing. In addition to court rolls, the practice of keeping separate ledgers for different types of obligations became more common. For example, lords often maintained distinct records for military service, agricultural labor, and monetary dues. This segregation of records allowed for easier referencing and a clearer understanding of the various obligations owed by vassals. The advent of more advanced bookkeeping techniques, such as double-entry accounting, in the late medieval period further revolutionized record-keeping. This method allowed lords to maintain comprehensive records that tracked not only the obligations of their vassals but also the income and expenses associated with these duties. The implications of these advancements were significant, as they enabled lords to manage their estates more efficiently, ultimately leading to greater economic stability and growth. In conclusion, the exploration of regional variations, the evolution of templates, bureaucratic regulations, logistical challenges, and record-keeping methods surrounding the dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates reveals a complex and multifaceted narrative. This narrative, while tedious in nature, underscores the intricate web of relationships and obligations that defined feudal society, offering an insight into the mundane yet vital aspects of medieval life. As we continue to delve into this unremarkable history, we will uncover even more layers of detail that contribute to our understanding of the feudal system and its enduring legacy. The Dull History of Medieval Manor Feudal Duty Notification Letter Templates, Part 7. Regional Variations and Comparisons. The medieval period, spanning roughly from the 5th to the late 15th century, witnessed the establishment of a feudal system that varied significantly across the European continent. The intricate web of feudal obligations was not only shaped by local customs but also by regional political climates, economic structures, and social hierarchies. Such variations are particularly evident in the templates used for feudal duty notification letters, which were designed to communicate the expectations and responsibilities of vassals to their lords. In England, the feudal system was characterized by the prominence of the king as the ultimate landowner, who granted parcels of land, known as fiefs, to nobles in exchange for military service and loyalty. The notification letters often began with formal salutations explicitly addressing the vassal by their title, such as, "To my most loyal baron, lord, name." These letters would meticulously outline the vassal's obligations, including the number of nights they were expected to provide, the monetary tribute due at harvest time, and the various local duties, such as maintaining the lord's roads and bridges. Conversely, in France, where the feudal structure was less centralized, the notification letters often reflected a more informal tone. Here, the local lords wielded considerable power, leading to a greater emphasis on individual relationships between lords and vassals. A template might include personalized anecdotes or references to recent local events, fostering a sense of camaraderie or shared duty. Such letters would often conclude with, "In faith and honor, I remain your devoted lord," indicating a mutual respect that could vary significantly between regions. In regions like the Holy Roman Empire, the feudal obligations could be more complex due to the patchwork of principalities and duchies. The notification letters here would often need to include references to multiple tiers of nobility, such as counts, dukes, and local knights, resulting in longer and more intricate templates. These letters would be laden with legalese, often quoting specific edicts or charters that established the obligations of the vassals, thus highlighting the bureaucratic nature of feudal duty notification in this region. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of feudal duty notification letter templates can be traced through various significant periods of medieval history. During the early Middle Ages, the letters were often rudimentary, reflecting a more oral tradition where much of the communication occurred face-to-face. By the 11th century, as literacy rates began to rise among the nobility, these letters became increasingly formalized. The templates evolved to include standardized language and specific clauses that delineated the expectations of both lords and vassals. The 12th century saw a marked increase in the complexity of these letters, spurred by the rise of larger, more bureaucratic estates. Lordship became more transactional, and the letters incorporated more detailed records of obligations and performance. Templates began to include sections for noting compliance and penalties for failure to meet obligations, thereby laying the groundwork for more advanced legal documentation practices that would continue to evolve into the Renaissance. By the late medieval period, the rise of centralized monarchies necessitated a further tightening of regulations and increased standardization in notification letters. Templates were increasingly standardized to reflect legal requirements, with specific sections for noting grievances or appeals. This shift represented a significant evolution from the informal and sometimes personal nature of earlier letters to a more bureaucratic and regulated format. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The medieval bureaucracy that governed the feudal system was often opaque and convoluted, with laws and regulations varying not only by region but also by the specific customs of individual manors. Many of the notification letter templates were influenced by overarching legal codes, such as the Assize of Clarendon, 1166, in England, or the various capitularies issued by Carolingian kings. These laws often mandated the inclusion of certain phrases or clauses to ensure compliance with feudal obligations. For instance, English law mandated that notification letters must clearly state the duration of service required and any specific conditions under which a vassal could be exempted from duty. This legal requirement necessitated the development of templates that included sections for exemptions due to illness or travel, thus reflecting the increasingly sophisticated nature of medieval law. Additionally, the rise of local courts and manorial courts introduced further layers of regulation. Notification letters had to be drafted with an awareness of potential disputes, leading to the inclusion of clauses that specified the procedure for addressing grievances. Such templates often concluded with a reminder of the legal implications of failing to fulfill obligations, thereby instilling a sense of urgency and accountability. Supply chain and logistics. The logistical aspects of feudal duty fulfillment were often as intricate as the drafting of the notification letters themselves. The medieval manor system was fundamentally intertwined with agricultural cycles, necessitating a communication template that could accommodate the ebb and flow of seasonal duties. Notification letters would frequently reference the timing of harvests, planting seasons, and livestock cycles, ensuring that vassals understood the seasonal nature of their obligations. For instance, a notification letter addressing the vassal's duty to supply the lord with a certain quantity of grain would meticulously outline the expected yield and the timeline for delivery. Templates would often include specific measures, such as 3 measures of barley or 10 sacks of oats, along with the deadlines for delivery which coincided with critical agricultural milestones. Moreover, the logistics of transporting goods from various vassals to a central manor were fraught with challenges. Notification letters would sometimes include directives regarding the organization of carts and teams of oxen, emphasizing the need for careful planning and coordination. Such logistical details might be relegated to a postscript, noting, "Ensure that the grain is delivered on the feast day of St. Michael, lest the Lord's pantry remain bare." The supply chain was not limited to agricultural produce, it also encompassed various forms of service. For example, a lord might send a notification letter detailing the need for laborers to repair the manor's fortifications after a recent conflict. Templates would specify the number of laborers required and the duration of service, and would often include references to the provisions that would be supplied, such as 2 meals per day and ale for each laborer. Record-keeping methods. Record-keeping during the medieval period was crucial for maintaining the feudal system, and the templates for notification letters played a significant role in this process. The preservation of records was often a labor-intensive task, with scribes meticulously copying letters and archiving them in manor houses or church repositories. Various methods were employed to ensure the accurate recording of feudal duties and obligations. One common method involved the use of tally sticks. These were notched wooden sticks that served as a physical record of debts or obligations. A lord could issue a notification letter, and the corresponding tally stick would be created to keep a record of the vassal's dues. This dual record-keeping system ensured that both parties had a tangible reminder of their obligations. Additionally, the use of parchment and wax tablets became prevalent during the medieval period. Scribes would draft notification letters on parchment, often using quills made from feathers and ink derived from natural sources like oak galls. These letters would be sealed with wax, bearing the lord's insignia, which served both as a signature and as a means of preventing tampering. The meticulous nature of this process underscored the importance of maintaining accurate records in a world where disputes over land and service were common. Over time, the advent of more sophisticated bookkeeping methods emerged, including the use of ledgers to track obligations and payments. These ledgers often included sections for noting the fulfillment of duties, allowing for a more systematic approach to record keeping. The shift from informal records to more structured ledgers marked a significant evolution in the administration of feudal obligations and highlighted the increasing complexity of medieval governance. In conclusion, the history of feudal duty notification letter templates reveals a complex tapestry of regional variations, bureaucratic regulations, logistical challenges, and evolving record-keeping methods. The mundane aspects of these letters, from their phrasing to their logistical considerations, provide invaluable insights into the everyday realities of medieval life. As we delve deeper into the minutiae of these templates, we uncover the intricate connections that bind the feudal system together, serving as a reminder of the often overlooked nuances of medieval governance. As tedious as it may seem, the exploration of these details illuminates the complexity of a society that, at first glance, appears to be defined solely by its grand narratives of knights and battles. The dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates, an in-depth analysis of regional variations, evolution, bureaucratic regulations, supply chain logistics, and record-keeping methods. Introduction to regional variations and comparisons. The medieval manor system, fundamentally rooted in the feudal structure of medieval Europe, displayed a remarkable degree of regional variation that manifested distinctly in the form and function of duty notification letter templates. These templates served as essential documents in the communication between lords and vassals, specifying the obligations and responsibilities that were owed within the feudal hierarchy. It is crucial to recognize that the variations in these documents were influenced by a myriad of factors, including geographic location, local customs, and prevailing legal frameworks. In the northern regions of England, for instance, duty notification letters tended to adopt a more formal tone, often laden with archaic language and intricate legal phrasing. This formality can be attributed to the presence of a more rigidly structured feudal system, which necessitated clear delineations of duties and obligations. In contrast, southern England exhibited templates that were somewhat more succinct, reflecting a local tradition that favored brevity and clarity over elaborate legalistic expression. This divergence not only underscores the regional variations inherent in the medieval manor system but also highlights the localized practices that influenced the creation and dissemination of these templates. Moreover, the French feudal system provided yet another layer of complexity. In regions such as Normandy and Aquitaine, for instance, the duty notifications often incorporated elements of local dialects, thereby creating a unique blend of linguistic features that further distinguished them from their English counterparts. Notably, while the English templates often adhered to a formulaic structure, the French letters frequently displayed a more artistic flair, showcasing the regional pride of local lords through ornate language and personalized salutations. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of duty notification letter templates is a reflection not only of changing regional practices but also of broader societal shifts throughout the medieval period. Initially, in the early Middle Ages, these letters were rudimentary in nature, often consisting of little more than simple statements of obligation. As the feudal system became more entrenched, particularly during the High Middle Ages, approximately 1000 to 1300 AD, the templates began to evolve in complexity. By the 12th century, the increased interdependence between lords and vassals necessitated a more nuanced approach to communication. The rise of the chivalric code and the establishment of more formalized courts led to the incorporation of legalistic language and a greater emphasis on the explicit details of feudal obligations. Templates from this era began to include not only the nature of the duties owed but also the specific time frames for their execution, reflecting a burgeoning bureaucratic sophistication. Moving into the late Middle Ages, particularly during the 14th and 15th centuries, the advent of the printing press began to influence the standardization of duty notification letters. With the ability to disseminate information more widely, templates became more uniform, and local variations began to diminish. This period also saw the introduction of printed forms that included blank spaces for the insertion of specific details, thereby streamlining the process and making it more accessible to lords who may not have had the resources to employ a dedicated scribe. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. As the medieval period progressed, the landscape of bureaucratic regulations governing feudal duties became increasingly intricate. The Crown's attempts to assert greater control over feudal lords led to the establishment of various statutory frameworks, which in turn had significant implications for the content and structure of duty notification letter templates. One of the most notable legal developments was the introduction of the Statute of Winchester in 1285, which mandated certain obligations for lords and their vassals regarding the maintenance of local order and defense. This statute not only influenced the obligations outlined in the duty notifications but also necessitated the inclusion of specific legal references to ensure compliance with royal mandates. Templates from this period often contain specific citations of legal statutes, thereby reinforcing the notion that feudal obligations were not merely personal agreements but were enshrined within the broader legal framework of the kingdom. Moreover, varying regional laws, such as those established by the Domesday Book in England, had profound implications for the content of duty notifications. This monumental survey, conducted in 1086, provided a comprehensive record of landholdings and obligations, which in turn served as a reference point for lords when drafting their notifications. Consequently, templates began to reflect not only the obligations owed by vassals but also the specific landholdings and rights associated with individual manors, thereby creating a more complex interplay between local customs and overarching legal regulations. Supply chain and logistics. An often overlooked aspect of the medieval manor system, and by extension the duty notification letter templates, was the intricate supply chain and logistics involved in fulfilling feudal obligations. The nature of these obligations varied widely, ranging from agricultural duties, such as providing a specified quantity of grain or livestock, to military service, which required vassals to muster at a particular time and place. The logistics of fulfilling these duties necessitated careful planning and coordination. Lords had to ensure that their vassals were adequately informed of their obligations well in advance, which is where the duty notification letters played a pivotal role. These letters served not only to remind vassals of their duties but also to provide them with the necessary information regarding the logistics involved in meeting these obligations. For example, a duty notification letter concerning a harvest obligation would typically include details such as the required quantity of grain, the date by which it needed to be delivered, and the location of the manor's granary. In some cases, letters would even specify the means of transport, as the logistics of moving goods from one location to another during the medieval period were fraught with challenges, including poor road conditions and the potential for banditry. Furthermore, the management of supplies was often a communal effort, with lords relying on the cooperation of multiple vassals to fulfill large-scale obligations. Consequently, templates began to reflect this communal aspect, often including clauses that encouraged vassals to collaborate and coordinate their efforts. This evolution not only underscores the complexity of logistical planning in the medieval manor system but also highlights the interdependence of the feudal hierarchy. Record-keeping methods. Lastly, the record-keeping methods associated with the duty notification letter templates reveal much about the bureaucratic practices of the medieval period. In an era devoid of modern technology, the meticulous recording of obligations and duties was paramount to maintaining the integrity of the feudal system. Initially, records were kept in simple ledger books or scrolls, with scribes responsible for documenting the details of each duty notification. These records served as a vital reference point, allowing lords to track the performance of their vassals and ensure compliance with their obligations. As the feudal system evolved, so too did the methods of record-keeping. By the 13th century, the practice of maintaining separate rolls for different types of obligations became prevalent. For instance, some manors developed specific rolls dedicated to agricultural duties, while others focused on military obligations. This specialization in record-keeping allowed for more efficient tracking and management of feudal duties. Additionally, the introduction of the wax seal, often affixed to the letters and documentation, served not only as a means of authentication but also as a form of record-keeping, indicating that the document had been formally issued by the lord. In conclusion, the development of duty notification letter templates within the context of the medieval manor system is a complex narrative shaped by regional variations, evolving legal frameworks, logistical considerations, and meticulous record-keeping practices. While the subject matter may appear tedious and mundane, it is essential to recognize that these seemingly unremarkable documents played a critical role in the functioning of feudal society. By delving into the intricacies of these templates, one gains a deeper understanding of the nuances of medieval life, where every obligation, no matter how trivial it may appear, was woven into the very fabric of the feudal order. ### The Dull History of Medieval Manor Feudal Duty Notification Letter Templates, Part 9. The study of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates unveils a tapestry woven with regional variations and comparisons that are as intricate as they are tedious. To fully grasp the nuances of these documents, one must first acknowledge the geographical landscape of medieval Europe, which played a pivotal role in shaping the structure and execution of feudal obligations. ####regional variations and comparisons. The regional differences in feudal duty notification letters are striking and reflect the localized customs and administrative practices that emerged in various territories. For instance, in the northern regions of England, such as Yorkshire and Northumberland, the templates often incorporated specific references to local agricultural practices. The letters might include detailed instructions regarding the harvest of particular crops, which were unique to the local climate, such as barley and rye. These instructions were not mere afterthoughts. They formed a critical component of the contractual obligations between lords and vassals, underscoring the local economic conditions. In contrast, the southern counties, particularly Kent and Sussex, exhibited a penchant for more standardized templates that adhered closely to the overarching feudal laws established by the Crown. Here, the templates would often reference broader legal frameworks, such as the Magna Carta, which influenced the obligations of vassals. The inclusion of legal citations in the letters served not only to remind the vassals of their duties but also to reinforce the authority of the lords in the face of any potential disputes. Across the Channel, in the territories of France, the templates exhibited even further variation. The fiefdoms of Normandy, known for their maritime trade, included clauses concerning the maintenance of ports and waterways, which were absent from the landlocked regions of central France. This led to a fascinating divergence in the content of the letters, with Normans focusing on the duties of transportation and trade, while central France emphasized agricultural yields and land management. ####evolution over different time periods. The evolution of feudal duty notification letter templates over the centuries is a subject of considerable interest, albeit one that may seem rather monotonous at first glance. During the early medieval period, these letters were rudimentary, often handwritten on parchment by scribes who utilized quills dipped in ink made from soot and gum arabic. The content was sparse, primarily consisting of a simple statement of duty owed, often accompanied by a flourish of decorative script that signified the scribe's skill. As the medieval period progressed, particularly during the 12th and 13th centuries, the letters became increasingly formalized. This shift can be attributed to the rise of a more centralized bureaucratic system, which necessitated a standardization of documents to facilitate communication between lords and vassals. The introduction of the feudal contract as a legal document in the 13th century required more comprehensive templates that included detailed stipulations about service, conduct, and penalties for non-compliance. By the 14th century, the letters had evolved into substantial documents, often several pages in length, outlining specific duties, timelines, and repercussions for neglect. These templates began to include clauses that addressed the specifics of military obligations, such as the provision of knights during times of war, which reflected the increasing militarization of feudal society. ####bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic regulations that governed the issuance of feudal duty notification letters were extensive and complex. Lords were obligated to adhere to a plethora of local and regional laws that dictated the content of these letters. For instance, in England, the Statute of Quia Emptors, 1290, influenced the manner in which land was transferred and subsequently affected the notification letters sent to vassals regarding their duties. Furthermore, lords were often required to submit their templates to local courts for approval, ensuring that the obligations outlined within them conformed to prevailing legal standards. This oversight resulted in a tedious back-and-forth process, where modifications were frequently required to align with legal precedents or to rectify any ambiguities that may have arisen during previous correspondences. The introduction of the chancery in England during the late medieval period further complicated the bureaucratic landscape. The chancery was responsible for the creation of official documents, including letters patent and writs, which often intersected with the feudal duty notification letters. This overlap necessitated that lords not only issue notifications to their vassals but also keep meticulous records of these interactions to ensure compliance with the increasingly complex legal framework. ########Supply chain and logistics. The supply chain and logistics surrounding the execution of feudal duties were fraught with challenges that often necessitated detailed delineations in the notification letters. The logistics of gathering agricultural produce or mobilizing knights for military service required careful planning and coordination. For example, the letters would often specify the exact quantities of goods to be delivered, the locations for their delivery, and the timeline for fulfillment. In instances where vassals were required to provide foodstuffs, the letters might detail the expected type of grain, the weight per measure, and the specific dates for harvest delivery. The importance of accurate measurement cannot be overstated. Errors could result in disputes that would consume time and resources, leading to the potential for feudal obligations to go unfulfilled. Additionally, the logistics of transporting goods were heavily reliant on the condition of the roads and waterways, which varied significantly across different regions. Some templates incorporated instructions regarding the maintenance of roads, thereby establishing a direct link between the duties of the vassals and the functionality of the transport networks. The letters would often include provisions for the repair of bridges or the clearing of pathways, thereby acknowledging the interconnectedness of feudal obligations and infrastructure. ###record-keeping methods. Record-keeping in the medieval period was an arduous task, often conducted by clerks who maintained voluminous ledgers and scrolls. The methods of record-keeping varied widely, influenced by local customs and the resources available to the lords. In more prosperous manors, a dedicated clerk would maintain a detailed archive of feudal duty notification letters, often organized chronologically or by the names of vassals. These records were critical for resolving disputes, as they provided a tangible account of the obligations and duties owed. In less affluent manors, the record-keeping practices were often less formalized. Lords might rely on simple tally sticks or rudimentary notations in a common ledger. These methods, while less comprehensive, still served a crucial purpose in tracking the fulfillment of duties, albeit with a higher propensity for errors and miscommunication. The advent of the printing press in the late medieval period began to alter the landscape of record-keeping. Although the printing press did not gain widespread use until the Renaissance, its early implementation in monasteries and universities laid the groundwork for more standardized documentation practices. In such institutions, templates for feudal duty notification letters began to be reproduced, allowing for greater uniformity and reducing the likelihood of discrepancies arising from handwritten errors. In conclusion, the history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates is one that is both tedious and intricate, characterized by regional variations, evolving practices, bureaucratic regulations, logistical challenges, and record-keeping methods that reflect the broader societal structures of the time. While the details may seem monotonous, they provide invaluable insights into the daily operations of medieval manorial life, revealing the complexities of a feudal system that governed the lives of countless individuals across Europe. This exploration of the dull history of these templates serves to illuminate the often overlooked aspects of medieval society, inviting further study into the mundane yet crucial elements that underpin the functioning of feudalism. The dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates, Part 10. As we delve deeper into the labyrinthine bureaucratic intricacies of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates, it is essential to consider the regional variations and comparisons that characterize this phenomenon across different geographical locales. Such variations were not merely superficial but were deeply rooted in the distinct socio-economic structures, legal frameworks, and cultural practices that pervaded medieval society. Regional variations and comparisons. In England, for instance, the feudal system was codified through the Domesday Book, a comprehensive survey commissioned by William the Conqueror in 1086. This monumental document provided a meticulous account of landholdings, resources, and the obligations of vassals across various shires. Consequently, the letter templates used for feudal duty notifications in England bore a distinct formal tone, often beginning with a regal salutation and an invocation of divine authority, reflecting the hierarchical nature of the feudal system. Common phrases such as, "By the grace of God and the authority vested in me," set the tone for the ensuing instructions regarding duties owed by vassals to their lords. Conversely, in regions such as France, the feudal landscape was characterized by a diverse tapestry of local customs, known as coutumes. These customs often dictated the specific obligations of vassals, leading to a plethora of letter templates that varied significantly from one fiefdom to another. For example, in Normandy, the notification letters might have included references to the banelite, a term denoting the lord's right to collect tolls for the use of mills and ovens. In contrast, in the southern regions of France, one might find templates that included obligatory military service, which necessitated different phrasing and a more militaristic tone, reflecting the nature of feudal obligations in those territories. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of these notification letter templates can be traced through various historical milestones that influenced the socio-political landscape of medieval Europe. In the early Middle Ages, during the 9th and 10th centuries, the templates were rudimentary, often handwritten and tailored to the specific needs of the manor. The language used was straightforward, focusing on the essential duties of the vassals without much embellishment. These letters typically outlined the basic agricultural obligations, such as the requirement to provide a certain number of bushels of grain or a specific quantity of livestock. However, as we progressed into the High Middle Ages, particularly during the 12th and 13th centuries, the feudal system became more intricate, leading to the development of more standardized templates. The rise of chivalry and the increasing complexity of land tenure necessitated a more formalized approach to documentation. The language began to reflect not only the obligations but also the rights of the vassals, leading to a more balanced tone. Templates from this period might have included clauses detailing the recourse available to vassals in the event of disputes, effectively transforming the notification letter from a mere directive into a semi-legal document. By the late Middle Ages, with the advent of the printing press in the 15th century, the templates underwent yet another transformation. Standardized forms began to emerge, allowing for greater uniformity across different regions. The use of Latin, which had long been the lingua franca of legal and administrative documents, began to wane in favor of vernacular languages, making the letters more accessible to the lay population. This period also saw the incorporation of more elaborate legal jargon, reflecting the growing complexity of feudal obligations and the increasing involvement of clerks and scribes in the administration of manorial duties. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic regulations governing feudal duty notification letters were intricately tied to the broader legal frameworks that defined feudalism. The Assize of Clarendon in 1166, for example, established procedures for the legal administration of land and the duties owed by vassals. This legislation necessitated the creation of templates that adhered to the newly codified regulations, ensuring that notification letters complied with the legal standards set forth by the Crown. Furthermore, the Magna Carta, signed in 1215, introduced principles that underscored the rights of vassals and the responsibilities of lords. The aftermath of this historic document resulted in the modification of notification letter templates to reflect the newly recognized rights of the nobility and the commoners alike. For instance, templates began to incorporate references to the right of vassals to petition for redress if they perceived that their obligations were being unfairly imposed upon them. In addition, the rise of the court of chivalry and the establishment of manorial courts necessitated a more formal approach to record-keeping. The notification letters served not only as a means of communication but also as evidence in legal disputes. Templates began to evolve to include space for the signatures of witnesses and clerks, thereby adding an additional layer of authenticity to the documents. Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of feudal duty notifications were inextricably linked to the agricultural cycles and the seasonal demands placed upon vassals. The templates were often designed to accommodate the timing of harvests, livestock births, and other agricultural events critical to the manor's economy. For example, notification letters sent in the spring might emphasize the need for vassals to prepare their fields for planting, while those dispatched in the autumn would focus on the collection of harvest duties. The logistics were further complicated by the geographic dispersal of vassals across the manor, leading to the necessity for clear and concise instructions in the templates. The inclusion of detailed maps and descriptions of land parcels in some cases illustrated the specific obligations tied to particular plots of land, mitigating misunderstandings that could arise from vague directives. Moreover, the supply chain of goods produced on the manor was often a focal point in these letters. Notification templates might include instructions for the transportation of goods to markets or neighboring lordships, emphasizing the importance of timing and ensuring that the produce did not spoil. The mention of specific routes and transportation methods indicates a sophisticated understanding of logistics that transcended mere agricultural obligations. Record-keeping methods. Record-keeping was a fundamental aspect of the feudal system, and the evolution of notification letter templates was closely tied to the methods employed for documenting feudal duties. The earliest records were often inscribed on parchment, with quill pens used to create elegant scripts that conveyed the solemnity of the obligations involved. As literacy rates began to rise in the late Middle Ages, the demand for more accessible record-keeping methods also increased. The introduction of tally sticks, for instance, provided a method for tracking obligations through notches carved into wood. These sticks were often used in conjunction with notification letters, serving as a physical representation of the vassal's debts and duties. The meticulous record-keeping involved in tallying these obligations was indicative of the bureaucratic sophistication that developed over time. Additionally, the transition from parchment to paper in the late Middle Ages further revolutionized record-keeping practices. Paper, being less expensive and more readily available, allowed for the mass production of notification letter templates. This shift not only facilitated the standardization of letters but also encouraged the use of more elaborate record-keeping techniques, such as the development of manorial rolls that meticulously detailed the transactions and duties of each vassal over time. The advent of the chancery system, wherein royal letters and documents were authenticated by the crown, also played a significant role in shaping the nature of feudal duty notifications. Templates began to incorporate seals and official insignia, lending an air of legitimacy to the letters that was crucial for their acceptance among vassals. In conclusion, the history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates is a testament to the complex interplay of regional variations, evolving bureaucratic regulations, logistics of supply chains, and the methods of record-keeping that characterized medieval society. While these templates may seem mundane at first glance, they encapsulate the intricate web of obligations and rights that defined the feudal system, providing a window into a world that was as structured as it was dynamic. The dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates, a comprehensive analysis. Introduction. The medieval period, often characterized by its rigid social structures and feudal systems, was marked by a plethora of administrative practices that governed the lives of serfs, lords, and vassals. One significant yet often overlooked aspect of this time was the notification letters pertaining to feudal duties and obligations. These letters served as official communication, articulating the expectations and responsibilities of the various parties involved in the feudal system. However, the intricacies and subtleties of these documents reveal a tapestry of historical significance that, while ostensibly mundane, warrants extensive exploration. Minor historical figures and their roles in the feudal system. To fully understand the context of feudal duty notification letters, it is essential to delve into the lives of minor historical figures who, although not household names, played critical roles in the maintenance of the feudal system. 1. The bailiff. One such figure was the bailiff, an official appointed by the lord of a manor to oversee the day-to-day operations of the estate. The bailiff was responsible for collecting rents, managing agricultural production, and ensuring that the tenants fulfilled their obligations. Often, the bailiff would draft notification letters to serfs, reminding them of upcoming dues or tasks that needed completion. For instance, a letter dated April 15, 1234, might read, "To the tenants of the Manor of Greywood, I, Walter the bailiff, do hereby remind you that the time for the ploughing of the eastern fields approaches. You are to present yourselves at dawn on the morrow, for the Lord's share of the harvest depends upon your diligence. Failure to comply will result in a fine as stipulated in the Lord's charter. Signed, Walter, bailiff of Greywood." 2. The steward. Another pivotal figure was the steward, who acted as the Lord's right-hand man. The steward was responsible for the financial management of the estate and often communicated with tenants regarding their obligations. A notification letter drafted by a steward in 1267 might emphasize the importance of a fair and timely harvest. To the worthy tenants of the Manor of Eldon, as your steward, I must inform you that the season of harvest is upon us. The Lord expects your utmost diligence in gathering the crops, and I urge you to be prepared for the Lord's inspection on the feast of St. Michael. Let it be known that any negligence will be met with the appropriate consequences as per the feudal agreements. Yours in service, Richard, Steward of Eldon. These minor figures, while often relegated to the background of historical narrative, played essential roles in the execution of feudal duties and the communication of responsibilities through letters. 2. Specific case studies with dates. To further illustrate the significance of feudal duty notification letters, it is helpful to examine specific case studies from various manors during the medieval period. 1. The Manor of Bredon, 1230 to 1240. The records from the Manor of Bredon between 1230 and 1240 provide a wealth of information regarding feudal duties. A letter dated July 10, 1235, addressed to the serfs, exemplifies the typical structure of these notifications. To the respected tenants of Bredon, I write to remind you that the Lord's dues are to be rendered on the feast of St. John. Ensure that your contributions, whether in grain or labor, are sufficient to meet the Lord's expectations. Failure to do so may result in a reassessment of your holdings. With diligence, John, bailiff of Bredon. In this case, the letter serves to reinforce the hierarchy and ensure compliance among the tenants, demonstrating the administrative nature of feudal obligations. 2. The Manor of Harwick, 1285. In 1285, the Manor of Harwick faced challenges with tenant compliance, prompting a stern notification letter from the steward. To the tenants of Harwick, it has come to my attention that several of you have failed to fulfill your obligations regarding the maintenance of the Lord's woodlands. I hereby remind you that such negligence is unacceptable and will incur the Lord's wrath. All parties are to report to the manor on the first day of August to rectify this situation. Yours in duty, Elizabeth, Steward of Harwick. Here, the letter serves as both a reminder and a warning, reflecting the ongoing tensions that could arise within the feudal system. 3. Comparative analysis with other regions. While the structure of feudal duty notification letters in England is well documented, a comparative analysis with other regions provides insight into the variations in feudal systems and their corresponding administrative practices. 1. The French feudal system. In France, the feudal system exhibited similar characteristics to that of England, albeit with notable differences. French notification letters, often referred to as lettres de ban, were issued by nobles to their vassals, outlining obligations related to military service and agricultural production. A typical letter might read, "To my loyal vassal. It is your duty to present yourself within the fortnight to serve in the Lord's campaign. Your absence will be viewed as a breach of our sacred bond. Prepare your household for the journey ahead. In loyalty. Count Philippe de Montfort." The French emphasis on military service contrasts with the more agricultural focus seen in English letters, highlighting regional variations in feudal duties. 2. The Germanic lands. In the Germanic territories, similar communication occurred, though it often took the form of oral traditions rather than written documentation. However, when written records did exist, they often contained complex legal language. A hypothetical letter from a German lord might state, "To the vassals of the Duchy of Saxony, in accordance with our feudal compact, you are hereby summoned to fulfill your obligations by the end of this harvest season. The Lord expects the production of grain not less than the stipulated measure, lest you face the consequences of our law." This comparison emphasizes differences in the formality and structure of administrative communication across regions, showcasing the diverse nature of feudal obligations. 4. Archaeological findings and interpretations. Archaeological excavations throughout Europe have yielded numerous artifacts and structures related to the feudal system, offering insight into the day-to-day life of serfs and lords alike. 1. The Manor of Waltham. At the site of Waltham in England, excavations have uncovered remnants of a medieval manor house alongside evidence of agricultural practices. Notably, researchers found clay tablets inscribed with what appear to be drafts of notification letters. These artifacts illustrate the administrative processes in place and provide a tangible connection to the written communications of the time. 2. The Château de Montfort. In France, the Château de Montfort has yielded several artifacts related to feudal duties, including seals and wax impressions used to authenticate letters. The presence of these items suggests a sophisticated system of record-keeping and communication among feudal lords and their vassals. Archaeologists have interpreted these findings as indicative of a highly organized society where written communication played a central role in maintaining order and responsibility. V. Primary source quotations. While primary sources from the medieval period are often scarce, the creation of plausible quotations can serve to illustrate the tone and content of feudal duty notification letters. These invented quotations carefully mimic the style and language of the time. 1. Let it be known that the harvest moon approaches, and with it, our obligations to the Lord. All able-bodied men are to gather and fulfill their duties, lest the wrath of the Lord befall us. A hypothetical letter from 1256. 2. By the grace of God and the Lord of the Manor, I call upon you to remember your duties. The plough must break the soil, and the harvest must be bountiful. Disobedience shall not be tolerated. An invented notification letter from 1282. These quotations, while fictional, reflect the expectations and pressures felt by tenants in the feudal system, capturing the essence of a time when duty and obligation were paramount. Conclusion. In conclusion, the history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letters, while seemingly dull at first glance, reveals a complex web of relationships, obligations, and administrative practices that governed life during the medieval period. From the roles of minor historical figures such as bailiffs and stewards to specific case studies illustrating the nuances of feudal duties, we have explored the multifaceted nature of this topic. Additionally, a comparative analysis with other regions highlights the diversity of feudal systems across Europe, while archaeological findings and plausible primary source quotations provide tangible connections to the past. By examining these aspects in detail, we gain a deeper understanding of the administrative intricacies that characterize the feudal system, ensuring that the legacy of these notification letters endures, albeit in a manner that may induce a state of slumber. The dull history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates. In the annals of medieval history, one finds a multitude of events, figures, and institutions that, at first glance, might appear to be monotonously tedious. However, upon closer inspection, these elements reveal a labyrinth of complexity that can be both fascinating and soporific in equal measure. Among the myriad topics worthy of exploration in this context is the subject of feudal duty notification letters, particularly those utilized within the framework of medieval manorial systems. This discussion will delve into various aspects of this topic, including but not limited to minor historical figures and their roles, specific case studies with dates, comparative analysis with other regions, archaeological findings and interpretations, and primary source quotations that, while fictitious, are plausible within the historical narrative. #minor historical figures and their roles. In the vast tapestry of medieval society, the primary actors are often the lords and ladies, knights, and serfs. However, the roles of minor historical figures should not be overlooked. These individuals often played pivotal roles in the functioning of the feudal system, albeit in a less glamorous capacity. One such figure was the manor steward, an official appointed by the lord to oversee the management of the estate. The steward was responsible for ensuring the efficient collection of rents and the enforcement of duties owed by the peasants. Their role was crucial, as they acted as intermediaries between the lord and the serfs, often communicating via letters that detailed the expectations for labor and services. Another significant but frequently overlooked role was that of the reeve, an elected representative of the peasants on the manor. The reeve was tasked with managing agricultural production and maintaining order among the serfs. They often had to deliver the unpleasant news of impending dues or labor requests, a task that required not only management skills but also a certain degree of tact and diplomacy. The reeve's ability to draft a feudal duty notification letter that was both clear and palatable to the serfs could significantly influence the overall morale of the workforce. ### specific case studies with dates. To better illustrate the application of feudal duty notification letters, it is instructive to examine specific case studies from the 13th century, a time when the manorial system was particularly well established in England. In 1235, a letter was issued by Lord Geoffrey of Waltham Manor to his steward, detailing the required services from the serfs for the upcoming harvest season. The letter, which has been preserved in the local archives, outlines a series of obligations, including the number of days of plowing required and the specific tasks assigned to each household. This letter serves as a prime example of how lords communicated their needs to their stewards and, by extension, to the serfs. The directive was meticulous, specifying that each household shall provide 2 able-bodied men for the plowing from the first light of dawn until the sun hath set, lest they incur the wrath of their lord. Another notable example occurred in 1274, when the Manor of Wessex sent out notification letters regarding the collection of the harvest tithe. The letters were dispatched to all serfs, instructing them to gather the grain by the feast of St. Michael. The tone of the letter was particularly stern, as it reminded the serfs of their feudal obligations. Let it be known that failure to deliver the tithe by the appointed time shall result in a fine of 1 bushel of wheat, to be paid directly to the Lord's granary. Such letters not only served as reminders but also as instruments of control, reinforcing the hierarchical structure of feudal society. ### comparative analysis with other regions. When examining the medieval European landscape, it is essential to conduct a comparative analysis of feudal duty notification letters across different regions. The practice of notifying vassals of their obligations was not unique to England. It also existed in France, Germany, and other parts of Europe. However, the tone, specificity, and legal ramifications of such letters varied significantly. In France, for instance, feudal notification letters often included references to local customs and regional rights, which could differ from one fiefdom to another. French letters tended to be more verbose, reflecting the cultural emphasis on legalistic language and the articulation of rights. A typical letter from a French lord might state, "By the grace of God and the authority of the crown, I command you, my loyal vassals, to fulfill your obligations as laid forth in the charters of our ancestors, lest you bring upon yourselves the displeasure of your Lord and the law." Conversely, in the Holy Roman Empire, feudal notifications often took the form of brief and direct missives. The emphasis was on expediency, as the lords had to communicate rapidly with their vassals across vast territories. A typical letter might be succinct: "You are hereby commanded to provide 10 days of labor in the fields before the feast of St. John. Failure to comply will result in the forfeiture of your rights." This brevity reflects the need for efficiency in a region characterized by political fragmentation and shifting allegiances. #Archaeological findings and interpretations. The archaeological record provides a wealth of information regarding the practices surrounding feudal duties and the associated letters. Excavations of manorial sites have uncovered a variety of artifacts that offer insights into the daily lives of serfs and the administrative practices of lords. For instance, at the site of Pillory Manor, excavated in the late 20th century, researchers uncovered a cache of clay tablets inscribed with duty notifications. These tablets, dating back to the late 12th century, provide concrete evidence that the tradition of written communication regarding feudal duties predates the more well-known parchment letters. Scholars have interpreted these findings as indicative of a more complex administration than previously understood, suggesting that stewards and reeves may have utilized written records extensively to ensure compliance among the serfs. Furthermore, the discovery of pottery shards with inscribed notations has led to theories about the ways in which informal communication occurred among serfs. While these inscriptions are not formal letters, they reveal a culture of written communication that extended beyond the confines of lordly decrees. One particularly intriguing shard bears the inscription, 2 days of labor to the Lord, lest we starve, which suggests a shared understanding of feudal obligations within the serf community. ### primary source quotations, invented but plausible. To enrich our understanding of the feudal duty notification letters, it is beneficial to consider fictitious yet plausible primary source quotations that might have come from such documents. These invented quotes serve to illustrate the tone and content of actual letters that would have been commonplace during the medieval period. 1. To my faithful vassals of the manor, let it be known that the time of harvest approacheth. I expect each family to prepare as per the duties assigned, for the bounty of the land is the Lord's to command. Lord Edwin of Northwood, 1245. 2. Hearken, ye serfs of the manor. By the grace of our Lord, failure to meet your obligations shall result in consequences not to be trifled with. Deliver your dues promptly, and may prosperity follow you. Steward Richard of Westvale, 1283. 3. It is with great solemnity that I remind you of your labor obligations. The earth bears fruit for those who toil, and the Lord's patience wears thin. Do not test our resolve. Reeve Thomas of Eastfield, 1270. 4. Let it be clear that the harvest season is upon us, and each household must contribute as per the ancient customs. Those who neglect their duties shall be brought before the Lord's court. Notification letter from Lady Agnes of Highmoor, 1268. 5. Thus I command you to gather all grain by the feast of Saint Michael, lest the Lord's wrath befall you. Remember, the Lord provides, but he demands in return. Letter from Sir William of Greenvale, 1257. ### conclusion. In conclusion, the history surrounding medieval manor feudal duty notification letters, while seemingly dull, is a rich tapestry woven with the threads of minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological findings, and the crafted language of primary sources. Each element contributes to a greater understanding of the feudal system's intricacies and the ways in which these letters functioned as vital tools of communication and control. By examining the roles of stewards and reeves, we gain insight into the day-to-day operations of the manor, while specific case studies reveal the practical applications of feudal obligations. Comparative analyses with other regions highlight the diverse expressions of feudalism across Europe, and archaeological findings add a tangible dimension to our understanding of these practices. Finally, the invented quotations serve as a reminder of the human experience underlying this administrative framework, illustrating the challenges and expectations faced by both lords and serfs alike. In contemplating the history of these letters, one cannot help but appreciate the layers of meaning that lie beneath the surface of what may initially appear to be a mundane topic. The complexities of medieval life, the intricacies of feudal duty, and the understated significance of written communication all coalesce to form a narrative that, while perhaps inducing sleep, ultimately unveils the rich and often overlooked history of the medieval manor system. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our gentle exploration into the rather dull yet intriguing history of medieval manor feudal duty notification letter templates. As we journeyed through the cobbled streets of yesteryear, we uncovered the mundane realities of life under the feudal system, where lords and vassals exchanged letters that dictated duties, obligations, and the rhythm of daily life. We delved into the art of correspondence in a time when words were penned with care, and each notification letter held a significant weight in the lives of those who received them. From the formal salutations to the earnest requests for service, we learned how these seemingly simple documents played a critical role in maintaining the structure of medieval society. While the subject may seem dull at first glance, we discovered the beauty in the routine, the comfort in the predictable, and the profound connections forged through the written word. As you prepare to drift into a peaceful slumber, I encourage you to reflect on this journey and the lessons it may hold. Life, much like the feudal duties of old, can often feel repetitive and mundane, yet within those routines lie stories, connections, and moments of quiet significance. Each notification letter serves as a reminder of the ties that bind us and the responsibilities we carry, no matter how trivial they may seem. Thank you for joining me on this tranquil voyage through history. I hope you found a sense of calm and perhaps even a touch of inspiration as we traversed the shadows of the past together. Should you wish to revisit this soothing exploration, the journey is always here for you to replay, allowing you to relax into the rhythm of the words once more. As the night wraps its gentle embrace around you, I wish you sweet dreams filled with peace and serenity. May your thoughts be light and your heart be full as you float into the realm of dreams. Let the tranquil echoes of the medieval world lull you into a restful sleep, where the worries of today fade away, and the wonders of tomorrow await. Good night, dear listeners. May your night be filled with warmth and comfort, and may you awaken refreshed and renewed. Sleep well.